This is Black Market Leadership, the underground resource for disruptors and status quo breakers.
Let's jump into your background now, because I've listened to other interviews you've done. I watched one. I think you spoke to with the Silicon Valley. You explained how, you went from Yale to Wharton Business School. You used to work at Time. You were head of marketing for a company that got acquired by Merkle, and then you started reading. You started diving into, if I'm correct, into strategic narratives. You started reading, I think, screenplays. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's basically correct. The timeline's a little. So before I was doing marketing in Merkle, so we have to go back to the .com era. So I was a coder. I started out as a software engineer, and a friend and I had an idea for an app. So this was a Windows app back in the day, and of the two of us, I spoke English fluently. So we said, okay, I'll write the business plan. So for investors. So I wrote the plan and we sent it to a bunch of VCs, and the reaction was really bad. And one of them wrote back, Andy, listen, I rate every plan I get on a scale of 1 to 10, and yours is a 1.
Worst.
And then even worst, in case we thought maybe 1 might be the top of his scale. But then he wrote not a compelling story, and that didn't mean much to me other than, okay, we're not investing. But then a few days later, I was walking by this Barnes & Noble in Manhattan, where I live, and there was a sign on the window that said, for anyone who wants to tell a compelling story. And there was an arrow to these books that happened to be screenwriting books, like you said. And so I, had nothing to lose. So I read these books, and one of the things I realized in reading these books is that every movie is really a pitch. Certainly like the epic movies. I mean, Star Wars, what's that a pitch for? It's a pitch for, caring about other people, being nice, not being in the dark, ultimately like that, right? Of course, pitching a business or a product, I don't have 2.5 hours and, Lucas CGI. So what applied, what didn't apply, this is really fascinating to me. And, I guess I took a first stab at it, and we sent out a new plan, and the change in the investor reaction was just really striking. And a few months later, we had a term sheet, and it was just fascinating to me. And yeah, that's where I started to learn about the story structure, and how that might apply to this kind of high-level strategic definition that I was looking for as a founder, and later working with other teams.
Since we're talking about screenplays, and actually going back to what you said earlier about, you got the CEO, you go to the team. It seems to me, as a total outsider listening to you, it seems to me like a challenge would be not getting a Frankenstein, a patchwork by committee, as opposed to getting a single theme of one soul, one mind. That seems to me like a big challenge.
Well, that's why of the two, one of the things you said to balance was the team buy-in, and the other side of it is that, that CEO authorship, that it really is this one person's vision coming through. And as I said, this process of kind of me working with the CEO alone, bringing it back to the team, getting their input, working back with the CEO, that seems to have, at a certain point, the CEO will say often to the team, hey, I'm hearing you, but here's where I want to go, and sometimes they'll say, oh, I'm hearing you, and I want to do that, so I think people still feel heard, even if their idea doesn't get, in there, but having this one person, and of course I'm working with them to kind of avoid lots, there's lots of little tricks. I mean, people aren't doing it intentionally, but lots of little tricks people will use to kind of combine lots and lots of ideas. So one of the rules I have is, like, for the top messaging, like this shift there's no ands allowed. So it's not like we're in a subscription economy and we're now mobile and, some no commas, like there's little tricks people will kind of fall back on to kind of glom more things on together. And, I think I've learned how to, how to steer people away from that.
What? Okay, without going into the secret sauce, what are some essential elements of a strategic narrative? Things that would make a strategic narrative successful.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can share the full secret sauce. It's in that post that I mentioned earlier called "The Greatest Sales Deck I've Ever Seen." Just Google it, you can find it. And it has 5 pieces. I've evolved this a little bit since then, but basically the 5 pieces are this. One is that shift in the world. What is the new game, and what is the old game that we were playing, and was yeah. How number 2, how can we show that winners are already playing the new game, and lose and anyone who's continuing to play the old one is on the road to death? Basically, that there are life and death stakes here already. The third piece is what I call the promised land message, or the object of the game. So we're going to say, hey, there's this new world here, and what's the object of that game? There's so one team I worked with called Gong. They sell software so now all the sales calls, all the interaction with the customers, those can all be taped and recorded, and people record those on Zoom. And so Gong then, first of all, they do that and they make it easy to replay those and see those. They also then sick AI onto it. So you can get like, the top salespeople are spending this amount of time talking about this, or, the whole call was this amount of time, or all these crazy things they can find out. And their promised land message is unlock reality. So it's, the shift in the world they talk about is goodbye opinions, hello reality. That there's this shift from, hey, we're going to run everything on opinions, to run everything on a more real view of what's happening. The fourth piece then is, okay, well, we want to get to this, whether unlock reality or, selling things by subscription. Well, what's going to be hard about that? This is what I call the monsters. So, in any movie, like, for Star Wars, which we were talking about, Luke can't just go and, destroy the Death Star. There's all sorts of things standing in his way that Obi-Wan's going to have to help him with. And we're kind of like Obi-Wan here, the prospect, okay, we've now hopefully sold them on the urgency and the vision of the promised land. But what's going to be hard about getting there, and then of course, and how are we going to help them? So what are our kind of I call this magic gifts, like the lightsaber, that are going to help them, our capabilities to get to the promised land. And then finally, whatever evidence we can show. The fifth piece is whatever evidence we can show that we're really able to do this. And so for in the context of sales decks, this is, companies we've helped, success stories, things like that.
So you mentioned sales decks. I always think about the question of who owns it. I always about culture. Who owns the culture? Who owns the strategic narrative? Is it everybody?
My view is it's the CEO. That the CEO alone. Others will contribute to it, and others may, the CEO, he or she may delegate pieces of that to other people, but in terms of who owns it, it is the CEO. I've made a big point of saying, hey, I will not lead these projects unless the CEO is willing to be that person who's going to be literally in the trenches with me, building that story. Of course, with the support, like I said, of their team.
What are some of the again, it seems to me strategic narrative, again, I had not heard of it until I started listening and reading you. So I guess one question is, how did you come the term strategic narrative? Did you discover it? Did you because you've also you obviously embrace it. How did you find it or discover it?
I've done one of those Google searches where you can see like the occurrence of a term over time. and it definitely, you can find it before me. So I guess I didn't invent the term, but I did. I think I can give myself credit for being a person who kind of started talking about the importance of this. And to me, it just fit really well because it is about, the VC, Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz, famously said, the thing a lot of people get wrong about the story is they think it's just marketing. No, the story is the strategy. And that really is, I think, that really is literally what I believe. And so I think elevating the narrative to being that, I don't know, strategic narrative, kind of accomplished that for me. And I don't know, I guess people seem to resonate with it.
It's funny because I am now I'm getting close to getting my to publishing my book. And I've been working. First of all, Andy, I can't sit down and write a book. I had to cheat. I did a bunch of courses and then I'm transcribed and now I got chapters. But I'm writing a book on chaos. And one of the things I've been writing about is called control factors, things which I have found in my experience that if you do, if you satisfy these certain areas, you really, really mitigate the effects of chaos. But if you don't do them, you neglect them, boy, it's just a big invitation. And one of the things is what I call clarity of purpose. And the reason why this is really important, and even goes back to military strategy. You mentioned Porter. So many people think, when you make a strategy, we're going to go to A, B, C, D, and E because they have the premise that we can anticipate the future. But things change, my friend. This whole thing, COVID. So there always so many times our plans will not go on according to plan. And what that does is that puts a big premium on middle management, leaders on the ground to make the situational decision making. The fact is, if you're a chief executive or a boss, you can't be over the shoulder of all your people. You need them to act. Well, how do you do that? Well, it seems to me a strategic narrative really, really puts the core concept in the people. So even if they don't have that specific direction, one is it seems to me they have the urgency. They know the urgency. They know they have permission given where the company is going. To me, it seems like a really, really big element of a strategic alignment.
Oh, you've totally hit it, Kevin. So I have a podcast myself where I interview CEOs I've worked with, and one of the things they say consistently, I'll kind of review with them, like, why did you come to me? Kind of the question you asked me earlier, like, what happened? And one of the things I hear very often is the company was growing to a point where I couldn't be in every meeting anymore. I couldn't be in making every product decision. I couldn't be in every sales call. Like, yeah, if there's, up to now, yeah, we grew the company, we didn't have a strategic narrative necessarily, and, everything sort of went okay. But now I'm feeling like I got to be able to transmit, the way that I think and where I want us to go to these people. And that, if this is too complex, if this strategic thing is like Porter's 5 forces diagram, like that's just not gonna work, right? Yep. So this narrative structure, they tell me over and over again, is what makes them feel like, wow, now I got everything aligned. Now everybody knows where we're going, even if I'm not in the room.
Yes. Andy, this is what armies have been trying to do for 2,000 years, because when the general's not there, they got to do something. But if they have the understanding of why this army exists, why this company exists, and these opportunities pop up or obstacles pop up, they know, because they understand it. They, like you said, the urgency. They know what to do and when to do it, even if you're not there. Oh my Lord, what a way to just mitigate chaos. I love it. This is really exciting. I'm surprised Wharton isn't banging on your doors. Hey, come here and teach these new courses.
I think my approach is too it's too controversial for them. It's because it flies in the face of all that stuff that I learned when I was there. I learned a lot of great things there too that I value quite a bit. including those things. But just in terms of what I found works for communicating this strategy, it's still, I think, a controversial point of view.
Okay. All right. Well, look, this is why it's perfect. This is why you're like the perfect guest, because I love this total disruption. I love this. Okay. We're getting close to our time here, but I got to ask, since you said you were reading a lot of screenplays, I have to ask, I'm a big movie buff. I love good movies. Do you have a favorite screenplay?
So just to be clear, I wasn't reading screenplays, but I was reading books about how to write a screenplay. But some of the ones I do remember from that book, some of the ones he analyzed were like, they're kind of classic old films like Kramer versus Kramer, or I guess he's kind of an older guy, so I think it's mostly like movies of the 70s and 80s. There's one called Body Heat, I think it was called. Oh
yeah, Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
I know that one.
And analyzed that one. Yeah. So anyway, the book that I'm talking about is that analyzes the screenplay is called Story by this guy named Robert McKee. Anyone you know in LA, they know this book. They've bought this book. Anyone who's had any thoughts about being in the movie industry or Hollywood knows about this book. It's very famous. But then there's a lot of other books I started reading too that were just all about the narrative structure. The thing is, the big question is, well, how do you apply that to leadership? Because it's not very clear. We're not building a 3-act screenplay for the SaaS company I'm working with, right? So, what are the pieces that apply? And that's where I found it really interesting.
Yeah.
What about you? Any movies you would recommend?
Oh, I love, one thing I get to do is I get to do tailored coaching, which is instead of having my clients read business books, they watch Netflix movies and series. And I would tell you, audience knows, but I'll tell you, if you want to watch a movie about strategy and team dynamics, first of all, it's not a movie, it's a series. It's on Netflix. It's called American Crime Story, The People versus O.J. Simpson. The prosecution and defense, look at the characters, look how they strategize, the deliberate, the emergent. I love it. I love it.
Right. And did you make also a reference in your to the King of Kong guy, Billy?
I probably did.
I thought I saw it on your in your podcast listings, like someone is the Billy. Do you know that movie I'm talking about?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. That's a great movie.
That's a great movie about pride and fall, and I just love that movie.
We call them unique people. They're very unique.
Yeah.
I would tell you though, if you're ever interested, I did finish a book called The Final Cut. And for the audience, in fact, I want to do a course on this. Final Cut is about the making of the movie Heaven's Gate. Have you ever heard of Heaven's Gate?
Yeah, I have, and I've heard of the book, but I haven't read it.
Oh, it's about how Heaven's Gate, well, not Heaven's Gate, how the director destroyed United Artists, the studio. Oh, it's such a good book. It's business, it's screenplay, it's accounting, it's strategy. So
great! I want to read it. I'm ready to get it on my Kindle.
You'll love it. You'll love it. Well, Mr. Andy Raskin, I got to tell you, this has been a pleasure, sir. Strategic narrative. I'm excited because I know when this goes, when all the spotlight hits strategic narrative, that you are the premier expert, and I got to talk to you first. So I'm so excited. So thank you for being a guest on Black Market Leadership.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It's great talking with you, Kevin. Thanks for the really great questions.
Yeah, thank you. And for the audience, you can find Mr. Andy Raskin at andyraskin.com. I'll have his bio at the very beginning of this, and check out the notes. And I'm sure if people have questions about how they can find you, they can contact you through LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's a great place. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always up for connecting with folks, and that's where I'm usually writing about what I'm learning about strategic narrative and what's happening with the different folks I'm working with, lessons learned, all that stuff.
Yeah, for the audience, you got to follow Andy. I've been following him again for over a year, and I get a kick about what things you write because I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at the power of the strategic narrative. So with that, audience, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. If you like this content and want to hear other things like it, head on over to the website at blackmarketleadership.com. That's blackmarketleadership.com. There you can subscribe to the podcast
And you can even create a free members profile